film about? What's it really about? What genre does it hit? What is really being said? What's really being seen? That's what you're talking about.
Hello and welcome to the Intermission podcast. My name is Nitin Sundar, but today I'm also Immortan Joe, and I'm joined by my good friend Narendra Dodi. Who are you today, Dodi?
Hello, Immortan Joe. I was first thinking of going with Max. Then I thought maybe I should just be more badass and go Furiosa. But after the last month of being in India and eating a lot of mangoes, I think I'm closer to the people eater.
The people eater. Yeah,
Unfortunately,
you're
I don't
also.
have any nipple clamps to put on, but the size is there. Not to worry.
How many tits of mother's milk have you brought from Portugal? What I also like about this mask is of course, is Immortan Joe, but since we are also talking about Tom Hardy,
Yes.
whose famous fetish is to wear masks on screen,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
there is, of course, Mad Max, then there is, of course, Bane.
Bane.
And what are the other movies? There was also Dunkirk, in which he is in a helmet with the camera placed behind him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in Inception, he is a man who wears many, many masks. He is, of course, the
Yeah.
impersonator. But I shall get rid of this. But since you're on a break in India from Portugal, you are in the wasteland.
And we're in Bangalore, so water problems are anyway there.
And all that gasoline is getting wasted standing in traffic. But we are talking about Mad Max today. The latest installment of the Mad Max franchise is currently out running in theaters and not doing too well. It's the backstory of Furiosa.
Say it properly. Furiosa, a Mad
Furiosa.
Max Saga.
Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is out there and running. Please do go and watch. A very, very interesting, I wouldn't say a fairly fitting follow-up to Mad Max Fury Road. Definitely does not match up to the brilliance of Mad Max Fury Road, which some would say is the greatest movie ever made, up there for sure. But a very worthy successor to a wonderful film and a very, very interesting franchise. So we thought we'd take the chance today to talk about Mad Max at large. So here we go, Turi. Let's start with your thoughts on Furiosa.
Yes.
Whatever you have to do. However long it takes. Promise me you'll find your way home.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
I'm Furiosa!
The darkest of angels. Do you have it in you to make it epic?
Let's get started on the Fury Road. I was super excited. First of all, happy to get back into the wasteland, especially after Mad Max Fury Road. Excited about both Anya-Taylor Joy, even though I was a little concerned how she would pick up after Charlize, but I was happy with her performance. The movie itself, I think I'm landing where you have spoken so far. I think interesting. Of course, nothing can be Fury Road. I don't think this movie is either trying to be Fury Road. It's a different kind of story. It's a different kind of genre itself, even though it's set in that world and it's got all the chases and everything else. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. There are a lot of things that I really appreciated about it. I thought she was great. A lot of the comedy worked well.
As far as the acting is concerned, I just wanted to add, well, Anya-Taylor Joy is, of course, wonderful. I think the girl who plays the younger version, or the youngest version of Furiosa also, looks a lot like Anya-Taylor Joy. You actually don't realize the moment when the actor switches in the movie. And suddenly you think, okay, she was a small girl, now she's grown up and she still has the same face. I had to go back and check. I watched the movie twice, so I actually could watch that moment. But a wonderful actor. Also, the person who plays the mother, she's only there for a few scenes right at the start. Some excellent actors, excellent acting all over the place. I would say the weakest link probably is Thor himself.
Hams'worth is a bit of the weakest link. He pulls a lot of actors from Australia, right? George Miller being from Australia pulls a lot of these interesting faces, and of course the accent is there. But I think you get to see a lot of performances that you would not otherwise see in mainstream Hollywood, right? So even that mother, like you pointed out, is an Australian actress. She might even be Kiwi, I'm not sure. But yeah, the other thing I would point out about the movie that did irritate me a bit, that I do want to talk about, is the special effects. I think
Yeah.
Fury Road, not that Fury Road was not made with effects as well, but there was a lot of real stuff. And one of the things that I really bumped up on with Furiosa was many times it was literally not sand. They were
Yeah.
clearly in some fake environment. I was like, dude, come on, that's for simpler shots. I get it when there are like 5 vehicles and they're all going to blow up, fine. But when there's just a car driving through a desert, like that you could shoot, and that starts becoming, it's an unfair knock, because
Yeah.
George Miller and Fury Road are at 110%. Then anything
Yeah.
lesser feels like, and you're capable of doing it, and we know you can do it, and we know you have the wherewithal and all of that. So that becomes a problem. The same shit is happening in every other movie, and it's not that bad because you don't expect much more. So this is out of
Yeah.
increased expectations. But overall, yeah, interesting, and I'm happy to jump into more of it. But let's do a whole Mad Max from the beginning.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with the Mad Max saga,
Absolutely.
so to speak?
I've only heard of Mad Max as a child, where you might find this funny. So back when my brother was in college, right, there used to be this gang of friends that used to come and visit us at home. Boisterous boys from IIT Madras would come right into our apartment complex in Gopalapuram, Chennai, and they would come on these very noisy bikes. These are not super bikes. These are like
Yeah.
Bajaj Splendor and Boxer and those kinds of bikes. But they would make a hell of a lot of noise because at least there would be 10 bikes that roll into a street.
Yeah.
So one of our neighbors, uncles, right, used to mockingly say, "Look at these guys. They are coming in like Mad Max." And I used to wonder, like, what is Mad Max? As a cricket fan, Mad Max used to refer to Aravinda De Silva to me, who is this great Sri Lankan batsman from from yesteryear, who got the nickname Mad Max for being a bit of a daredevil batsman at the cricket.
Okay.
Right? So that was the only Mad Max I knew. And then Mad Max Fury Road came out 8 years back. It's been a long time actually since Mad Max Fury
16,
Road came
I
out.
think. Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road is right up there, and if I were to make a list of top 5 movies that I've watched, MMKR would be one of them, and MMFR would be another one of them. Haven't seen anything like it, right? And everything you mentioned, right? The problem with Furiosa is that it has to live up to an unbelievable standard. If Furiosa had come 8 years back and Mad Max Fury Road now, we would have been, I think I at least would have been blown away then, and I would have been blown away all the more now.
Yes.
And Mad Max Fury Road would have been a worthy step up on Furiosa in that order. Right, but the reverse is not true, and there are reasons for that, of course. But just the way the camera is sped up to try and give you that feeling of things happening faster, the grainy granularity of like you said, the grit, the dust, everything. The very kinetic or the aesthetic of those chase sequences, where it's typically one truck going, a rig going at great speed, and there are smaller cars and motorbikes coming on the sides, and pole cats, right? People hanging from poles. Trying and taking shots at them, trying to puncture the tires of this rig, engines going down, engines getting repaired real time. There's a certain aesthetic and a certain grammar to the chase sequences in this movie. And for that to come in whatever 2014, I think, or 2015, whenever Mad Max Fury Road came, well into the modern day action cinema industrial complex, if I were to call it. For a new aesthetic to be established so late in the game, and not say in we spoke about Matrix, right? The last time we did it. Now that was around the time when new inventive stuff was happening around action cinema. Terminator, even before that, you would have expected someone to come up with the quintessential car chase at that time, and not in 2015. For George Miller to come and create something so special and new in that setting, right, in the desert, and to do it that way at the age of 80, it was just mind-blowing for me, right? And I rewatched that film on TV because there was no way to go and get another IMAX experience now, and it blew me away. I had access to a good 4K print with good sound system, and you just cannot take your eyes off the screen for a moment, right? And
Yeah.
that's just talking about the action. And there's so much more to Mad Max, right? There is, of course, the philosophical underpinnings of what
Yeah.
the storyline means. There is the soundtrack, the music that goes
Yeah.
into it. There is the structure of these films, right? There is no let up at all in a
Yeah.
movie
Yeah.
as it goes. The characters are well etched out. There are payoffs that happen, right through the movies, right through various movies. There is a music box that appears in part two, Mad Max, which I went and watched, and that music box reappears in Fury Road. I
Yeah.
noticed it when I rewatched Fury Road a couple of days back. So there are these payoffs, and they're not just random Easter eggs that are placed there for effect or
Yeah.
something. Right? The other really good thing I liked about Furiosa, from a plotting sense, was while it is a prequel to Fury Road, you can actually watch both these movies independently, and you would enjoy them completely. There is nothing
Yeah.
that says, "Oh, you wouldn't understand this if you
Yeah.
wouldn't get the gravity of this particular moment if you haven't
Yeah.
lived in the
Yeah.
saga already," and so on. Right. So there's so much to appreciate about everything that has happened in this franchise.
As a kid, I'd heard of Mad Max, and I'm fairly certain as a kid I've seen Beyond Thunderdome also, because I have this vague memory of having seen some Tina Turner movie.
Yeah.
Now, there are not many Tina Turner movies, so it must be this one.
Yeah.
As we grew up, of course, you know that Mel Gibson started his career with Mad Max, but nobody's really revisiting. Same as you, came back into consciousness with Fury Road. When Fury Road came, I was all in. I watched it. I watched it again. I watched it multiple times in theater. I've revisited that movie many times as well. I've like studied that movie inside out. Different the ways in which story is told by movement, by action, and by action I don't mean fighting action. I mean by people doing things. There's almost no dialogue.
Yeah.
Again, it's very silent movie. Even Furiosa is like that. I think
Yeah.
we can do a word count match between Anya-Taylor Joy in Furiosa and John Wick in the later John Wicks. And for that matter, Tom Hardy in Fury Road also says close to nothing. I mean, it's mostly grunts and whatever else. I mean, we were
Yeah.
talking about his fetish for mass, but I think he also has a fetish for voices and grunting and not using language. Partly it's in the character as well because he's lost all his humanity and he's like animalistic and everything else. He's more brutal than anything else. Actually, these are very classical techniques, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing necessarily new. It's just done very cleanly.
Yeah.
The idea of shooting with something in the center of the frame so that you can keep track of it.
Yeah.
We lost that aesthetic midway because of music videos and MTV and fast cuts and this and that, and the Michael Bayification of everything became just, you started getting short lengths becoming lesser. Your
Yes.
average short length ASL that they talk about, which is like 15-20 seconds before, started becoming lesser and lesser, and it started to lose meaning.
Yeah.
But even if you go back and if you look at the Bone movies, the second and third Bone movie, especially when Greengrass was doing that super fast cutting,
Yeah.
it was again exactly the same.
Right.
The central information is right in the center of the screen. The main thing you want to, like, he'll cut to a shot of this guy's eye, then he'll cut to a shot of the passport, then he'll cut to a shot of everything else. But that passport will have the name right in the center. So you don't have to search. The audience's eye doesn't have to like, where am I looking? What am I looking for? And that's the same thing that he's very clear with in Fury Road. Now that we talked about wanting to do a Mad Max episode, you rewatched some of the movies. I went and rewatched two. I didn't do one and Beyond Thunderdome. But if you look at least speaking for myself, when I looked at two.
Structurally, 2 is exactly the same as Fury Road, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One is structurally, two is, I want to talk about the design of the vehicles as well.
Yeah.
You look at that car, it's simultaneously classic 80s look, but also kind of timeless, or he has figured out how to make it look iconic and timeless. It's the same car, I mean, not the same physical car. Max's car hasn't really changed from the first movie to even until Furiosa, that random appearance it is.
Which it won't, right? Because Apocalypse has happened now and nobody's designing new cars. Whatever you're seeing in the wasteland is maybe a minimal innovation on top of aesthetic and punk innovations that are happening on top of scientific innovations have actually stopped at that stage. Right? There's nothing new
much to do.
that's coming. Yeah.
But it still continues to look cool. Obviously, it looks newer or whatever else. But I like how he's made something look both specifically of that time, but also somehow iconic and timeless. he's somehow, I mean, obviously you freeze everything in time in the 80s, it sticks, but it still looks so cool. It doesn't look dated. We
Yeah.
don't look at that and think, oh, this looks very 80s. We look at this and think, oh, this looks like some very iconic, classic kind of leather and all of that, right? You don't think
Yeah.
of a specific time. I really enjoyed that. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the first movie?
Yeah, so this all begins in part one, where the world is on the throes of societal collapse, and Max Rokatansky, our protagonist, is part of the police squad, and there's a name for me. He's called a road warrior or something. And these are these cops in cars who are trying to establish law and order as people are increasingly biker gangs are beginning to go into dystopian behavior, where there's a lot of pillaging, there's a lot of
Yeah. Anarchy and
violence,
violence.
anarchy. Yeah, people are still trying hard to retain the veneer of society and normalcy. And Max gets into trouble with one of the biker gangs because of being a cop. The movie ends with that gang actually killing his wife and child on the road, literally. Right, they get run
Yeah, I've
over
seen it.
in front of him, and he's trying to save them. He's not able to. The moment he loses his family, Max goes from being
Max to Mad Max.
he goes from Max to Mad Max, right? He becomes extremely angry, loses his purpose in life, basically, right? And the degradation of Max, the humanity of the Max character, coincides with the world itself going into chaos. So, in the last act of the first part, Max comes back as a vigilante. He comes back to extract revenge, and he kills the people who killed his children. But the movie ends on this very, very dark note where it says that, okay, he's become one of them because he's lost his humanity, and everyone out there basically is trying to try and fashion a justice and a life for themselves in a world which has completely lost its law and order. And these beats continue to echo through the course of all the movies, all the way to the latest movie where Chris Hams'worth playing Dementus is in many ways a mirror image of Max, because he too has lost family, and he's trying to find his own way of redemption. The way he has done it is by taking power. The way Max does it right through the course of every subsequent movie is to try and find purpose somewhere, and it is by helping other people who need something. He's trying to keep that humanity within himself and not become a savage who is just seeking revenge. And that's what happens in part two. I haven't watched Thunderdome, but I believe something like that happens in part three. We've seen Furiosa, it's exactly that. There is a throwaway shot of Mad Max, of course, in Furiosa as well, where he's doing exactly that. In fact, he is the person who brings Furiosa back to the Citadel. So this really is Max's journey. So
one question. So the first movie doesn't have any of these ecological undertones, like water is not missing in the first movie. Is just anarchy and societal collapse.
Society going into anarchy. It's still running as a normal place, except you have random biker gangs. Think of it as Gurgaon, right? So the Mad Max 1 is set in Gurgaon. Also, by the way, I think George Miller was a nobody at that stage. The budget is shoestring. Mel Gibson is a nobody as well. I think this was probably one of his first roles. You can see the lack of money in this film. It's also a product of its times. The stunts aren't great. The chases aren't great. It has its own. So you need to watch it with that. With that context in mind. But things get rapidly better. I think part two was a huge improvement on part one. But
part two has clearly like gotten some amount of money and some amount of skill in making stuff. And you're talking about part one, you're also talking about like early 80s Australia, like how much filmmaking was really happening, how much like skill did they have at that point in terms of production and things like that. Mel Gibson also, his breakthrough was Mad Max. His breakthrough in Hollywood was Lethal Weapon a few years after Mad Max 2. Which is also this guy who's like one step away from going nuts, right? His wife has died or committed suicide. I can't remember what. The first shot of Lethal Weapon, the first shot of the first movie, is him putting a gun in his mouth and being ready to kill himself, and then he's like not able to, or I think he's playing roulette or something like that. He's like taken out bullets and so he's that level of crazy. Like the whole thing is, do you want to deal with this mad cop, or do you just want to quietly like get arrested and go to jail? Like that's the thing. But this idea of a person who's like on the edge and the inner beast is basically ready to take over. is very much the character he's been playing for a long time, which is also now in hindsight, now knowing all of the other things that have happened with him, feels like that's him only. So it's like Mel Gibson's, now his beast has taken over completely, and whatever racist, Holocaust denying and all of that nonsense stuff that has happened. But you can see him not being very different from his iconic characters. So, or the other way saying, his iconic characters have been built off of his personality types or the real crazy glint in his eye that he has, which he has in all of his movies. Also, you can see him, he's like ready to pop at any point. Anyway, so coming to 2, it's called Mad Max 2 Road Warrior. So he's, like you said, he's just doing his own thing, trying to survive. One thing I wanted to say when you said he tries to help people, I would say he doesn't quite try to help people, as he gets put into situations where he has a choice to help people, and he then takes the choice. He's as such
just looking out for himself, right? He's like, whatever it takes to stay alive another day. And he has this resentment inside him. But midway through these movies, typically he gets put in a position where he either can choose to walk away and do his own thing, or fight for a cause. And he always chooses to fight for a cause.
Get some scope at humanity and redemption, and he goes for that. He's not actively searching for a good deed, or he doesn't come to help.
He doesn't come to help.
He happens to intersect with the story, but he's doing his own thing. So here he lands up at some kind of a refinery. Right? There's some oil refinery, gasoline refinery. We should do a bit on all the names and character names as well. He comes across this refinery. He wants a little bit of oil. He happens to save a couple of people who had come out of that refinery who were going somewhere else. Saves as in he sees them getting attacked. He then goes, picks them up and brings them in because he just wants some gas from these guys to keep moving. And the refinery people first, of course, don't trust him. But they start to get attacked by the gangs. And he then gets into a situation where he says, I'll help you take your refinery truck and go find another place for you guys to settle at or whatever. Eventually becomes a full-on Fury Road type of chase. There's a tanker. He's driving the tanker. There's cars this way, that way. They have that flying thing in this, which is in Furiosa, but not in Fury Road. I think flying vehicles have given up by the time we've hit Fury Road timeline. But he then helps them escape. He finds a little bit of humanity with this kid that he works with. 2, I think you can see them spending a lot more money on explosions. There's this classic shot that he likes of a one vehicle. It's the most basic thing, right? Nothing is doing is you. It's one vehicle coming and just straight on crashing into another and exploding, right? One vehicle will explode, the other one will go through that explosion and come out, but has caused the explosion by breaking into it. It has happened, I think, in every Mad Max movie, and it is an iconic, like a real explosion shot. Speaking of real explosions, fake fire also looks bad when you know what real fire looks like. So when you're looking at Furiosa and you're seeing explosions and some of the explosions are not real, you're like, I know exactly how this war rig looks like when it's driving through fire, because I saw it drive through actual fire in 2015. So, you want that to look right. But speaking of production, it is more expensive. It takes more time. There are more people involved. So it's always easier to just say, 10 people sitting in a room with 20 computers or whatever can sit and do this. So it's largely a production complexity issue.
Yeah, but why did they run into these issues for Furiosa, which they did not run into during Fury Road?
I don't think they ran into it. You start getting pulled into this test is more efficient than that one. And then it's a matter of what battle do you want to fight? And maybe Miller is like, I'm too old to fight these battles, or I'd rather do it in person. I don't know what, internal push and pull will happen. The problem happens when you're doing it for unnecessary shots, right? When there's something just like basic establishing shot of something driving through a desert, and that sand is not sand. It then, it leaves a bad taste. Because the other thing that happened is Dune. Dune is entirely in sand, like except for the pure effect shots of the sandworm. You can see them like their feet are sinking in. Every time they run, they have to like extra lift their leg. The way your foot moves is just very different than if you're running on a general surface and I'm showing some sand just like flying up behind you, because you're running on a flat surface and I've put some effects around it and there's some puffs of sand every time. But that was too full. Like you said, completely just becomes a chase thing by the end. His sense of finding interesting things to do in a chase is just amazing.
Unbelievable.
There's always some fun thing. People are climbing up. They're jumping from one vehicle to the other. It starts to get obviously more complex by the time you get to Fury Road. And at least back then, it was an effect. So when you see two cars bang into each other, somebody did this. Even if it's like slow at 20 kilometers an hour and not the way they're showing it at 50, it's still like happening, quote unquote, for real. And that has some kind of weight to it. But yeah, that was two. And for me, that it felt very much of a piece with all of the other movies. So it's, while he's evolving, he's also constantly saying the same story, reminding of the same story beats and so on.
Yeah. And let's go to Fury Road then.
Yeah.
Because we're skipping past Thunderdome because Tina Turner, there is a dome inside which gladiators kind of fight each other.
Fight. It's another society has been formed under the idea of people beating the shit out of each other, and she runs that place. Okay, let's talk about Fury Road. So Miller has been trying to return to the world of Mad Max for a long time. Along the way, he's managed to make also his, like, we have to talk about the vast difference between the guy who made Mad Max and the guy who made Babe and Babe 2 Pig in the City and fucking Happy Feet. So the one person is holding both of these things.
Which is just mind-blowing. To start with, Mad Max, he must have been in his 30s when he made the first couple of movies. He's now in his 70s and 80s when he's making the latter installments. And like you said, in the middle, Babe. I don't know if Babe was a very popular movie in in the US and globally, but I remember it was a huge hit in India.
It was huge in India. Globally, it was a hit.
Yeah, because I think the special effects of getting a pig to speak. If I remember as a child, it was the first of its kind of a movie where it looked so realistic to see animals speaking. Of course, later you had Stuart Little, and there's not even a big deal anymore. But I remember watching Babe and being like, Babe, what's this?
And he's at the forefront of that CG also, right? I mean, for a person who was doing things real, and we're talking about how he does things real in Fury Road. He's also a guy who clearly has a lot of understanding of how to frame and tell a story and do production on a high CG environment like Babe. So he's done that in the meantime. He's always wanted to return to the Mad Max world. Mel Gibson become a huge star, but also going on a bit of a downswing in the early 2000s. He managed to get Mad Max Fury Road greenlit. It was going to be an older Mad Max. Mel Gibson was going to play him as well, so it was going to be an older Mad Max who's like finds one last mission, a grizzled guy,
rodeo,
one last rodeo and all that. They were supposed to start shooting in 2001. Towards the end of the year in 2001. They were supposed to shoot in Australia. September 11th happens. There's massive currency fluctuation, and he cannot make the movie in Australia anymore. So financially, it wasn't viable to do it. So they stopped. He went on to, I think, Happy Feet is what he picked up at that point. A few years later, both one is Mel Gibson gets arrested. He has his racist rants, Holocaust denying, all of that stuff starts happening. So Mel Gibson slightly moving on the side. Our man is still trying to make this movie, but not quite getting anywhere. I think in 2011, almost 10 years later, he manages to make enough money from Happy Feet, get like a whole this thing. He's already attached Charlize, I think. 2011, they were supposed to shoot again. They get everything into place. They go all the way to Australia, to the desert to shoot. And like you said, some freak rain has happened, and the wasteland has become the green place. So he's like, what is this? I came here for dystopia, you're giving me all green stuff. And then they figured out, okay, let's go to Namibia and all that. And then finally they shot that in 13, 14, whatever. It was insane. Apparently, by all accounts, nobody has anything good to say about the actual making of that movie. Tom Hardy and Charlize wouldn't talk to each other. They had their own problems. I don't know what they were fighting about.
Tom Hardy wouldn't come out of his trailer van because he was...
Hardy's I think he's a general tortured artist. He plays that persona fully, that I don't understand, I'm not coming out, I will only do what makes sense to me, or whatever. He's got that nonsense. Famously, at the Cannes premiere, the premiere happened at Cannes, and that's the first time they saw the movie. And at the press conference, they came out from the movies, they're sitting at the press conference, and Tom Hardy says, before anybody can say anything only, he says, I was very difficult on this movie. I was very uncooperative. I just did not understand what George was trying to do. I think George was not able to communicate to us, and I can't speak for everybody else here, but I think we are all on different stages of this, that we simply could not understand George's vision. And if you don't understand and you're in this and he's just telling you, the truck is moving, I want to look out of the thing and I want you to turn at that exact moment where your face is in the center of the screen and look at something off there, and we don't know what you're looking at. So he was just like, I did not get it, and I have to like sincerely apologize to George for all the trouble I caused him. He just said that.
I only get
And
it
then
now.
Yeah,
When I
now
watch
I
the
understand
movie.
post facto.
Yeah.
So and they talk about that. Even what's her name? Shali said the same thing. George eventually said, I have a problem elucidating what I am trying to show. So I can see it in my head, and I can see it very clearly in my head.
Yeah. And you can see
But I
that.
don't know how to, and I don't know how to explain it, and that creates a problem. So they had all sorts of issues. Shali said, right? She said basically that I'll never do another. Somebody said, "What about sequel?" I said, "Are you mad? I'm not going back into that fucking desert. I'm never doing another. I love George. I loved what he made here, but I'm never doing this again. Like, it's just not happening. No, thank you." So I think it was very taxing on everyone.
Yeah.
But also, I think what happened with a lot of that craziness, the Tom Hardy not stepping out of his trailer, all of that, a lot of the other unit, like the Polecats and all, got to practice, make up their stories, figure out how to do it. They did it like 100 times. And I think he's big on lore, even though he doesn't care about the logic of fitting things. He likes everybody having their own story. And so the Polecats have their own story of equipment they had with them and how they had no choice but to train on that thing versus something else. Everybody had their own story of how things happened. And he had an entire set of storyboards for Furiosa.
Right.
Not for Furiosa, but for Furiosa's backstory.
Right.
He had like, why is this lady like this? What has she done?
Yeah.
How she lost her arm? So all of these things, he had something ready for Charlize to use as, backstory to help her performance.
Yeah.
So then, of course, once they started making this movie, they changed a lot of stuff, but he had a lot of it in place. Talking about Fury Road a little bit, the edit style changes, right? At least in the first two movies, we're still in the old style edits where you have long takes, you have action happening all over the screen. I think the main difference is that in Fury Road, he really started going to this very quick, swift edits. I think that became difficult for people to understand also.
Because a lot of shots, lots of panels that you're creating, right?
Yeah. Everything is through action. For a long time, you don't need a lot of dialogue. You don't need to know who is doing what. It's just very clear. Somebody's running, somebody's chasing. There are some people who need to be protected.
Yeah.
And everything is visual. There's dialogue going in the side. If you hear it, you hear it. If you don't catch it, you don't catch it.
It's not important.
I remember when I was watching it, I was told it's the greatest thing ever. It took me a while. The first 15-20 minutes where Max gets captured, Max tries to escape, they grab him.
He tries to jump and they grab him back.
All this looked interesting, but I was just like, this is not like grabbing me. I can find this to be kinetic and visually interesting, but I'm not, my body is not responding to this. I'll tell you when it hit. The chase starts. Even first time the cars come and he's strapped to the front. By the way, him being strapped to the front as a blood bag is no different than the strapping they did in Road Warriors. So all of the visuals.
Correct. This is all continuous.
And the same kinds of things that people are doing. They were stringing someone up in front of the car as an intimidation tactic. Now they're stringing him up, but they're also trying his blood bag. Yeah, that's right. And this blood bag idea also is not there before, I think.
Blood bag is not before because it's a state of more advanced dystopia, right? Because
so
in the earlier movies, people are still normal human beings, but now it's become a radioactive wasteland. So people have become half-lives. And half-lives cannot survive without getting regular supply of blood, which they are not able to produce themselves. So that's
none of which is explicitly explained in the movie, but it's
but you figure it out. They're called half-lives. They look metallic and they need blood. So it computes.
So it's all straightforward.
And Immortan Joe is trying very hard to give birth to full lives. Because it's clear that the world is overrun by half-lives and full lives just don't exist.
I was on first day for sure, sitting there, dying to watch this movie, and I'm like, it's still not hitting this life-changing thing. Then that fight scene happens where Max tries to take that water. Charlize fights with him. He's chained to Nux through the door which he has broken and carried with him.
Correct.
And the physicality of that scene where there are four different groups effectively. Three of them in the fight and the bunch of wives who are trying to help by pulling the chain this way and that way. And the complexity of that scene. And everybody
when it hit you.
understanding whose side am I on, whose side.
Yeah.
Like Nux and Hardy have to
Yeah.
briefly team up in that thing, where even though they're not technically on the same side or anything.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, okay, now I'm in. And that is actually, leaving aside all the action and cool stuff, polecats and all that, that is the scene I've rewatched the most, by the way.
Interesting. Not the
this
chases.
Not the chases. It's this one, because I'm just like, wait, visually, how do you make sense of this whole thing? They go here, they bang that gun. She goes chasing for the gun. They trip her with the chain. She pulls that gun out here. They pull the bullets out, and they're like teaming up and moving against each other. Those girls are pulling the chain. It's like insane. It's almost a cartoon, right? It's like your Wile E. Coyote or whatever. It's that.
Correct.
It's that kind of movement.
And it's narrative, right? So I have a problem where people very easily say stuff like John Wick is mindless action, or Mad Max is mindless action. It is anything but mindless action. The fact that these movies are low on dialogue doesn't make them dumb. Because the exposition or the narrative flow, you can see it happening in the action sequences. The sequencing, the blocking, you're never confused, right? When you're watching, let's say, Fast and Furious, which I would say is a mindless action movie, and there is a certain fun to watching that as well. But you can see that there is no coherence sometimes when you're going from one scene to another. And those are even in the good ones, right? There are also bad action movies where you just cheat, right? Where you're shooting in the night, you're just cutting scenes for the sake of cutting. You're not really following anything. You're just trying to create moments of hype, right? And you're not even expected to follow. You're expected to be confused to some extent. And in that delirium, you actually enjoy the action, right? These movies don't do that, right? There is such a beautiful sequential flow to how one thing leads to another, to another, to another. Whether it is someone, a car that's trying to catch up with the rig on the side and trying to throw spears, and somebody from the truck, retaliating by training a gun on them and shooting. And then for a moment, you get that wide angle to see how that car explodes when it is shot, how it goes offline. Somebody from that car jumps off the car, comes to the undercarriage of the rig. Within the next 20 seconds, you will get a scene establishing what that person is doing. And if you compute the amount of time they spent from that jump to actually gathering their bearings and starting to fiddle with the engine or the fuel or whatever, it would actually compute, right? It is nothing is happening out of coherence at all in this thing. And in the middle of all that comes the inventive stuff, right? The polecats. You have the balloons, you have the airplanes, right? In the latest movie, you have that thing with the whirling balls, which happens in Fury Road. In Furiosa, right? Which sucks in the planes, and then there is this whole squid kind of thing that is, unfurling as the truck continues to go. Which, by the way, in my opinion, the best chase sequence in the entire franchise comes in Furiosa, and it is that one. In my opinion, that stunt sequence just blew my mind. That's the point where, and it goes on forever. It's 10 minutes. It's again stuff that you've seen before. You've seen it being done well many times. For me, there's just something that happens in that sequence in Furiosa where it goes to the next level, because you have Furiosa herself under the carriage trying to do some sabotaging. And broader point, these are not mindless. This is very tough to do, right? And it's the same thing. Like with John Wick, you get that same feeling because the storyboarding of the action is so beautifully done that you need to wait and appreciate it. You're mindless if you feel that this is mindless action.
It's very intentional. Everything is there for a reason. I was just going to say one more thing about that scene, the one I was talking about, where the three of them are fighting with all the girls. Tom Hardy has not yet spoken, I think, until that point.
There is only one line he's spoken, which is, "Hey, that's my car."
That's my car. That's from this thing. Even in that scene, you can see him like he's holding that shotgun.
He's grunting.
He's just grunting. And if somebody's trying to go, he says, "No, not you, you." Like Charlize tries to go with the pipes, like,
correct.
He's just grunting all through. And then after that, he gets in the car and she gives him that file. And he's like, that filing is going on for the longest time.
Seriously, and you can feel the irritation, right? Because you want him to take it off. You're feeling the shackles. And it goes on like he's walking with it. And
he's just constantly filing away. I want to read a quote. When we're talking about all of these complexities of shooting, I want to read a quote by Steven Soderbergh. I don't know if I've read this quote to you before. I remember reading it to a bunch of them. So Soderbergh, Ocean's 11, Traffic, Erin
Sex lies and
Brockovich.
videotape. Yeah.
Sex Lies and Videotape started from there. Now he does all sorts of other stuff as well. But he's
Yeah.
always experimenting. He's doing crazy
Yeah.
things, whatever. And he's a very established, and he's also constantly working. Right?
Yeah.
He's not a guy who sits for 4-5 years. He's just like constantly working. Soderbergh, not just storytelling, camera work, all of that. He keeps trying new things. So this is Soderbergh after having watched Fury Road multiple times. The ability to stage well is a skill and a talent that I value above almost everything else. And I say that because there are people who do it better than I'll ever be able to do it after 40 years of active study. I just watched Mad Max Fury Road again last week, and I tell you, I couldn't direct 30 seconds of that. I'd put a gun in my mouth. I don't understand how George Miller does that. I really don't. And it's my job to understand. I don't understand two things. One, I don't understand how they are not still shooting that film. And I don't understand how hundreds of people aren't dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a guy who's literally one of the major filmmakers of our time.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I don't get it. I don't understand what's happening. Like my body is unable to like comprehend. My brain is unable to comprehend physically how you did half of this stuff. And it's not like they didn't use graphics and all of that. But most of it looks real and most of it is done real as well. You can always feel when there's a real person doing something as opposed to graphics doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, if you talk about MCU and all, it's all graphics. The reason those movies worked when they worked was because the storytelling was fun and you were in with the hero and all of that and you wanted to pass on. It's not because the action by itself is particularly good or
It's
well
not.
shot. Or well
And it's
staged
also
and all.
set in a slightly quasi-supernormal
Fantastical world.
realm. So then you can get away with a lot of stuff because you're
Yeah.
creating environments that aren't necessarily real.
It's
here
not
you're
supposed
not.
to anyway. Yeah.
Here you're actually creating a visceral, very real environment.
Yeah.
Obviously dystopia, but dystopia also means you're to some extent from a scenario and scientific development point of view, you're actually a little even suppressed from where you are right now. Right. So in that sense,
fair
everything has to look that much more real. And I do believe with all of that, right, despite Fury Road being widely considered one of the greatest movies ever, I don't think it was a massive commercial success because the cost of making that movie was so high. And I think some of the choices that went into Furiosa would have been dictated by that also.
Possibly.
Right? The only way to actually recoup the investment is to keep the investment lower because there's only so much a movie of this kind can do in terms of market and box office. So,
Yep. Absolutely.
I want to speak a little bit about the philosophical underpinnings of the movie itself, right? Of the entire franchise.
Entire franchise. I feel it comes out strongest in Fury Road because
it comes out in Fury Road. You're right. Yeah. Fury Road is where really you're getting to see. Okay, because until then, what you're seeing is it's just lawlessness. The world is trying to re-establish order. People are trying to. It's mostly just hunt and grab, right?
Yeah.
You see structures have been set up by the time you come to Fury Road. There is one supreme leader who has emerged, Mr. Immortan Joe. And you can see that there are two or three things that are very jarring, but also, if you think about it, very believable in this post-apocalyptic world, right? The only resources that really matter are fuel, water, which makes sense, obviously food, and that is directly correlated to water, and bullets. I find that interesting because there are these three towns, right? So there's the town of prosperity, which has water and greenery, and Immortan Joe sits on top of that, and hence he is the supreme lord. It's because that's what sustenance is. But water scarcity and food scarcity is so real that he actually brands water as a drug, right?
Yeah.
Even when he gives it out to his people who he subjugates with water, aqua-cola, he tells them don't get addicted to this because it will take control of your lives, right? Which is a reflection of the scarcity, but also a reflection of him trying to maintain the power position by not making. You really don't know how much water he has access to. He probably has access to all the water that is required, but he's rationing the supply because that's how he maintains his power.
Yeah.
And then there is fuel, which I find interesting, right? In a world where everything is gone, right? You are living in the post-apocalyptic reality. Transportation should not be the most important thing in your life.
Yeah.
But somehow these vehicles, whether they are cars or bikes and like retrofitted gizmos, continue to remain so important. Transportation remains important. You have nowhere to go, but still people are going all the time, right?
Yeah.
Which for me is a sign of how masculine stupidity will continue to flourish in a world that is
even-
post-apocalyptic also.
Yeah.
And the
Very nice.
phallic symbolism around these vehicles, right? And there is this scene right at the start of Furiosa where he's this old guy with the tattoos, I forget his name, who's sitting and explaining the V8 engine and that
that
might
story
motorbike.
guy.
Right?
Huh.
Yeah, and there's this whole pan out that happens to that big cruiser bike, which looks like a massive, like 10x massive Harley Davidson type thing.
Yeah.
You're living in a post-apocalyptic world where this should not be important or matter, but people are still so drawn to engines, drawn to these bikes. See what this is capable of doing when I turn on engine number 2, which I found very, very interesting. But you think fuel should not be this important to your existence in the future, in a post-apocalyptic future, and then you find out there is a bullet down. Because what can be even more trivial in a world of this nature is weapons, right? And but weapons are like the third most important resource. There is of course the fourth resource, which is mother's milk, which also again it's a symbol of the prosperity, but also a sign of how, for me, this entire movie is a metaphor for how apocalypse has been wrought upon, partly because of masculine stupidity. And now the world is really striving for that balance, the balance that has gone. The imbalance is that there is no feminine beauty in this world anymore. There's no feminine touch in this world. And even the symbol of that masculine decadence, which is Immortan Joe, is trying very, very hard to find a full life. And the only way you get a full life is if masculine and feminine combine. And in a sense, the story of Max and Furiosa is that, right? And this is the other thing. And I saw a video on YouTube, which we should probably link to. It only had like 1,000 views or so, but it says something very interesting. Max is a man who has lost his masculine side. So when you see Max for the first time in Fury Road, he actually has long hair like a woman.
Yeah.
Right? He is repeatedly haunted by thoughts of the family and the people that he wronged, which is a very feminine thing. Right?
Yeah.
And he's struggling. He's unmoved because of all of this. They capture him and everything. Furiosa, on the other hand, is a woman who has lost touch with her feminine side. Like she's gone through a certain trauma as a child, which has made her so hard and so cruel that she is now bent upon only revenge. The thing with Max is he actually doesn't have revenge. He wants redemption, but revenge is he's gotten his revenge already. He doesn't know what to do, and that is why he's searching for missions. Right? Or you're not searching for; he's landing upon missions and trying to complete his purpose. Furiosa, on the other hand, has one singular mission in her life, which is to go back to her origin, which is the green place of Mini Mother.
Yeah.
And that's her driving force right from the start, with that one seed that she has, which she has to take back, right? And she has the passage back to her home tattooed on her left arm, which she loses. She loses her left arm. She loses her root back. She loses her hair, right? Which is again a symbol of, someone losing their feminine side. And Fury Road really is this beautiful moment where these two lost souls come together and complete each other in a sense. They provide, the puzzle sort of fits in, and together they're able to. And it takes Max to tell her that you actually going back to the green place is not what you are meant to do. You need to go back to the Citadel, because the Citadel has everything that you are thinking of. Yeah, there's water, there's food. What it needs is a new leader, right? And we need to go, or you need to go and probably find that. And again, after bringing her back there and helping her usurp the throne, so to speak, he again recedes into the background, right? Like if you watch this movie, you see, you just think about the funny names like gasoline and aqua-cola, and you think, okay, this is some retro punk shit that that they're just throwing out. But the entire world has been devised in a very thoughtful way, way. In a lesser movie, in a movie which did not have such mind-blowing action and cult punk to it, you would have probably thought, I at least would have spent more time thinking about the universe. In this movie, I did not. Until now, I did it for this podcast, and I started reading, and I'm like, oh shit, there is so much meaning to what they're trying to build out here.
The feminine thing was not there in the first bunch of movies, right? So
I think he really finds his voice also, I think, in the last two films, really.
Miller also has a different point of view after so many years, to have a different sense of even the ecology and all of that comes in a lot more cleanly and clearly in these movies.
In fact, the entire setting, right, the bullet town and the gas farm don't exist in the first two films, because they have not yet been set. So he's actually spent time thinking about this entire universe much more deeply. Where will it go in the future? Like, if I were to draw the through line 20 years, 30 years later into this apocalypse, how will societies spring up? How will dynasties spring up? And he's built that. Right? That you see.
What is the logic? What's the clean through line? So one of the things he also did when he had the idea of the wives and we are not property and all that. Again, that's also through line from all of this. Once you get power and there's scarcity, how do you show off your power? How do you like hold power as well? Is by having so many wives, you want to have kids or whatever else. I don't know if you read about this. He had Eve Ensler come in and talk about violence and femininity and all of that. Eve Ensler is
who's
this.
that?
She's a feminist thinker. I think
Okay.
she's the writer or one of the people around vagina monologues as well.
Okay.
So she's one of these like leading thinkers on femininity in the modern world. Okay, and I don't know enough about her. I just know her as a icon, but I don't know things about her. But she came in and gave workshops to not just all the wives and Shalis, but even to Immortan from the other side, like to tell Immortan what Immortan's character would have looked for to subjugate to be able to.
Got it.
So a lot of those things also have gone in. So this is not a movie that is just let me spend some. This is not George Miller just saying let me get 100 stuntmen to jump from one car to another, but he's also on the other side got like somebody like an Eve Ensler sitting there and giving workshops on violence and on domestic violence and on abuse and how that happens. So mindless, not just from an action point of view, mindless even from a storytelling point of view is something that absolutely does not fit for these movies. I don't think anybody says mindless for Fury Road anyway, but clear that there's a lot of thought gone into it. This would still be a great action movie even if you had stripped away a lot of this.
Absolutely,
stuff,
right?
But
it's
but
so
he
well
has a
thought
point of
out.
view. He has something. He has a point of view. He wants to say something.
And there's more, right? So you see Furiosa, she's always applying war paint on her. The war paint is actually oil, which again is if you think about the biggest wars that have been fought in our history, right? And there is a little bit of exposition in Furiosa where they talk about all the wars, and now we will have the 40-day war of the wastelands, right? It is a bit clumsy, but I do sense that what he's trying to say is so much of what we fight over is actually resources, right? And war paint being symbolized by fuel is just one of those things, right? And it fits. You see a lot of people are okay taking fuel into their mouth, right? Spitting it into the thing to fire up an engine, all of that. I just like the hard cut way in which people do mechanical stuff in this movie. Like remove a petrol tank, attach it to another bike, now take that bike, it's all done. It's so nice to watch. Like everybody's a mechanic. When a bike is getting abandoned, somebody that's taken a headshot, it's a very powerful bike. So they don't want the chasers to change their bike, so they remove one tire and take the tire away. So she then stops, takes her tire off, puts it into this, takes a petrol tank, puts it here, then starts the bike and goes. I just like the
this is the
touch and feel.
You have to do the steps.
You have to do
5
the
steps to do. You have to do the steps and then come out, and we'll do the steps.
It is going to slow you down a bit, but
it's useful in the and we'll also do it wordlessly. And the fact that they'll be able to do it shows you how skilled they are also. So there's like a lot of storytelling that's happening in that fact of
everybody's become good with their hands. Basically, everybody's become good with their hands in the apocalypse, which is good.
And even when she gets kidnapped, when Furiosa gets kidnapped, she's busy sabotaging those bikes.
And she has a plan.
Accidentally get caught. She doesn't accidentally get caught or anything. She literally she's actively ensuring that these people are unable to leave or unable to take those vehicles with them. She is sabotaging them, right? So
and she is always aware that she does not want the route to the green place to be revealed to anybody else. So she ensures that this guy is kind of choking by the time he gets to Chris Hams'worth and can't actually explain where they came from.
Yep. And even when she's on the bike, she wakes up and she starts gnawing at
the fuel.
So there's a high level of resourcefulness. There's a high level of being told what is important and what's not important, and having that
and knowing it.
Put into it. So let's talk a little bit about the story of Furiosa.
Furiosa, of course, first appears in Mad Max Fury Road as this fully formed woman warrior who leads the wives to their redemption. And Furiosa Part 5 is, of course, her backstory and what led her to be the way she is. The big build-up, of course, is to how she loses her arm. But what the movie does so well is, by the time she actually loses her arm in Furiosa, you've forgotten about the fact that she's about to lose her arm. Right?
Yeah.
And even after that, there is a twist and then a double twist on how she actually ends up losing her arm, right? Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
This is a movie about redemption. This is a small girl who was kidnapped as a child from the place of plenty where she lived with her family, with her mother. A place with a lot of women, as we see at the start of Furiosa, and hence probably also a nice place. She's taken away into the wasteland and, first kidnapped by a bunch of wastrels who take her to Dementus, played by Chris Hams'worth, who is one of the many people trying to usurp power in the New Order. And Dementus, in a almost a dynastic trade deal of sorts, exchanges her to curry favors with Immortan Joe.
Yeah.
And that's how she becomes a part of Immortan Joe's gang, where again she then needs to hide her identity. She needs to fake an escape from Immortan Joe's gang in order to get away from them, but then comes back, acts as a foot soldier, doesn't reveal the fact that she is a woman, and becomes one of the trusted lieutenants in Immortan Joe's army, becomes eventually the person who handles the war rig, which we see later on in Fury Road. But she gets there by dint of her hard work and her abilities of being a very, very skillful fighter and extremely brave. And this movie is about that, really, and her trying very hard to find her way back home and not eventually getting there, because that story then continues. But in part, also extracting vengeance on Dementus, I think, by the end of the movie. And then we know that she gets to extract her vengeance on Immortan Joe in Mad Max Fury Road.
If you see how Fury Road works, there's a kind of implication, and I think it was there in the Furiosa backstory at that point, that she was also one of the wives.
Yeah.
And either she could not have kids or something else. So then she ends up becoming a warrior for this thing. But there is an understanding that she has herself been abused or wronged by Immortan Joe. I think that gets changed here once they started really fleshing out the story for how it would work in a movie. They adjusted some of the things.
Yes and no, because there is a scene in Mad Max Fury Road just before she kills Immortan Joe where she asks him, "Do you remember my face?" Which is a very strange thing to ask, because obviously he does remember her face because she's been there right through.
Yeah.
What she's really alluding to is something else from the past. And I don't think it is the fact that she was the child who ran away. So there is some backstory there.
In Furiosa, after the first Mad Max, it is probably the most clear revenge is eventually a hollow thing, which it becomes very obvious by the end. Like Chris Hemsworth is talking only about that in the end. So in the end, she finally manages to get her revenge. But when she goes to Chris Hemsworth talks about whatever Dementus says, "What will you get? Sure, you'll kill me, but that is me. You're going to become me, because I lost my family, I lost everything, and I tried to
and I lost my humanity."
So it's not going to help you. Sure, do whatever. And he's doing it in a very cackling and whatever else way. But he is speaking.
That is the story.
Pretty much making clear what the theme of the movie is, which then fits. One of the things I liked about this working as a prequel to Fury Road is that then it fits into her saying, "Revenge is not the thing. I need redemption." Like this movie is actually all about revenge. Furiosa is all about revenge. Fury Road is all about redemption, saying that revenge didn't get me anywhere. I need to do something good. I need to find meaning.
Yeah.
Which is when she says, "Okay, fine, I have to take these girls and go off. I have to do something useful." So that,
and it's the same journey that Max is on as well, right? Because everyone is going through the same experience of having been wronged in the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And how do they make sense of their life? Start with anger,
then go into revenge,
seek revenge, and then go to redemption. Yes.
Yeah. Then try to find some meaning. I wanted to talk a little bit about this whole hair thing in Furiosa. She, as a kid, cuts off her hair and kids. So you're like, okay, this moment is happening. She's now going to become bald and stay bald or whatever.
But she comes
and
back
she puts a wig on her head. She escapes from Victus and goes off. And she's pretending to be a guy. Now she's grown up. Everything else. By the way, so while we're here, let's just quickly talk about the girl. The younger girl. A, very good performance. B, what you were talking about. I was also losing it at some point. Like the first face is very clearly not Anya-Taylor Joy, the one who's picking up the fruit. There's a kid. Okay, fine.
Correct.
As it started going forward, as she started covering her face a bit, at some point, and I was watching this, by the way, with a friend of the pod, Barry, from our previous episode. Barry and I went and watched this in one of the Bangalore theaters here. At some point, it's like, doesn't this kid really look like Anya-Taylor-Joy?
It is.
And then the switch happened in this movie. And then the swap over happens and it's Anya-Taylor-Joy because the kid is taller also.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, you know what they've done?
No.
As it starts getting closer, they've started using CG to change the eyes and everything else.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
initially it's a girl, but the last 10 minutes of the girl that's not Anya-Taylor-Joy is Anya-Taylor-Joy. Slightly stuff about her has been planted onto this girl.
Interesting.
Bigger eyes, and she's constantly covering her face. So they're starting to use more of the top part of Anya-Taylor-Joy's face in this performance. So they've done things like that where they've replaced it and everything. In the middle period, you're just like, wait a second, have we already switched? What is happening? Is this not Anya-Taylor-Joy? But why is she so small? Like your brain is not comprehending. And then it becomes that. So so this hair, why does she grow her hair? And I have a practical reason for why she grew her hair. Not within the story, but within the telling of the story. Once she's become that T-Spot, she wants to escape when that war rig is made. For the benefit of our audience, she's trying to escape when the war rig is made, and she wants to somehow. She's got the map on her hand.
Take it and go. Correct.
The bottom of that war rig has a bike attached to it.
Yeah.
She's put a bike there. She wants to get off at some point and escape on her own, right? And we've not even seen. She's put food and everything else. She's under the war rig, but they get attacked. She comes out and then she starts helping our what's our guy's name?
This guy,
The
Protean Jack.
Protean Jack. These names. Okay. So Protean Jack, who's the
Praetorian Jack. Sorry, not
Praetorian. Sorry,
Praetorian
Protean
Jack.
is Praetorian Jack. Correct.
Both are South
Protean
African,
is
but
less.
Praetorian Jack.
Same.
Praetorian is more specific South African.
Yes. So she then comes out. He notices her there.
Yeah.
He doesn't know it's a girl. She tries to escape, but then it's the middle of this major action scene. In that sequence, at some point, her cap or whatever falls off, and her
That's when the hair comes off. Yeah.
That's when the hair comes off. He realizes this
is
is the girl, and he takes her under his protection. Here's the thing: how does that scene work if there's no hair? If she stayed bald?
As in, he would not have realized that she's a woman.
Yeah.
But why does it matter whether he knows if she's a woman or not?
Which is why you need that story. The thing is, they wanted a connection between those two.
Oh,
assuming he wants to realize. Which is not a romantic love, but it's a it's a connection of two souls meeting, right? They do that hand on the head thing. They really respect and equal each other. It's your Tom Cruise and Ilsa Faust in Mission Impossible. It's not necessarily a romantic love. Yeah. The option to that now showing a woman in another way, the only way to do that is to now sexualize and say, okay, you saw breasts or whatever else. Like it had to be a shot which had the shirt. In which case you need hair, so you come back. Then you should have just taken out the hair from the previous one. That girl should have just escaped in some other way.
All these movies, right? We've had 5 movies now. There is not a single explicit scene of romance at all. Anywhere, right? If you now look at, I'm going to Mad Max Fury Road. There are scenes where you really think they're going to kiss because, right towards the end of the movie. Especially where he saves her life, right at the end when she's fully battered and everything. The arm is gone, this and that. And there is a scene where you actually expect them to kiss, but he actually exchanges fluids with her. He gives her his blood. And he tells her, my name is Max. Right? And he's blinking. He's not able to look at her. Again, this is something I read somewhere.
Max.
My name is Max. This is my
name's Max.
And he's it is as close to sex as it can get in this universe. Right? And you know that they're actually together as one soul
unit.
One unit. And it works. It is such a beautiful, tender, lovable scene. It doesn't have any hair throughout Fury Road. It still works. So So I mean, there's not really a counter to your point. I don't know. I don't know why they had hair there. They had it for effect, I guess. But it's.
So here's the explanation, right? George Miller eventually said that I saw her with her hair flowing. I wanted that shot. Now I was just like, fuck it, let's just do it. What's the big deal? It was literally that. George Miller's like, George Miller also is very good at every now and then saying, fuck the logic, I'm just going to like...
I like this.
I like this, it's cool, we'll figure it out, it's fine.
Because 5 minutes discussing why he showed hair. Because Sunsilk. Amazing.
Which is a great shot, by the way. Her hair flying is like a beautiful image. But you could have just avoided that by not having the kid cut her hair off. The thing is, you're trying to have the same powerful movement twice. So she's going to cut her hair. We know she's going to cut her hair. But you have it twice is kind of pointless. He had this logic even for... You've seen one. So was one the one with Toe Cutter? Is Toe Cutter the villain of an?
Toe Cutter,
Yeah. So Toe Cutter actor is Immortan Joe.
Correct. Yeah.
Same actor.
And I believe Immortan Joe also has another role in Furiosa as well, because I saw his name come twice in the credits.
That's a different. By the way, Immortan Joe, the actor, is dead. He
Oh.
died between the two movies, so it's a new actor.
So he is not
in
Immortan.
Immortan Joe.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
he is
Whoever
the-
plays Immortan Joe in
Joe is-
Furiosa
yeah.
is credited twice. In Lucky Hume is the
Leshy,
guy.
yeah.
He plays Leshy Hume.
So they asked him, "Oh, is Immortan Joe supposed to be toe cutter? He somehow survived the events of one, and he's become." And George was like, because it's the same actor, people are trying to put that logic back. He's like, I don't know about all that. I like Hugh. I like working with you. I brought Hugh back. You want to make whatever backstory to connect those two characters and make up your own like fan fiction of he survived the ending of Mad Max 1 and then he came back. Go ahead. But I like Hugh. I wanted to work with you. I brought him back. So he's got this. Stick to the point. Stick to the point, my man. Let's just be straight and just say, don't like distract yourself.
And he's not even showing his face. So yeah, he could be.
Yeah, what is
it's
it?
true.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about is how across all these movies there is this moment, right, where somebody needs to come back to save someone from a point, potentially a bottleneck. A bottleneck keeps appearing in these films.
Yeah.
It appears in Furiosa right at the start, where the mother asks her to go back and stays at the bottleneck and tries to shoot down Chris Hemsworth gang as they come in, but she comes back to potentially try and save her mom, but she can't, and that alters her life completely.
Yeah.
Later in the same movie, Praetorian Jack sends out the green flare, asks her to go, but she doesn't go. She stays, she comes back, fights with him, saves him, and takes him back. And you see that, of course, happening in Fury Road as well, right? In Fury Road, Nux basically sends everyone through that through the bottleneck, and then explodes the ring, killing Rictus and the entire gang, right? And Witness Me. Also on that, which I thought is a nice repeating trope. As you watch that movie, in fact, it comes even in the first part or the second part, if I remember right. So it's a nice repeating theme. The whole Half-Life concept, or the whole War Boy concept, right? It's a bunch of brainwashed followers who act as an army, right? In many ways reminds me of certain despots who are very powerful in the world right now. With their bunch of brainwashed armies who typically don't even know why they're doing what they're doing, but they're just there in the promise of of moksha or redemption or a straight passage to heaven at the end of it all. But I think Nux's journey in Fury Road is very, very nice and interesting, where he finally realizes he doesn't need other war boys and Immortan Joe to witness him. He only needs the love and acceptance of one person, and she witnesses him. So which I thought was nice.
Technically, he's the one with the biggest arc in Fury Road, by the way. The others are like just making step changes. He's the one with the actual like character changing arc. When you're talking about these followers and all that, Miller understands the importance of iconography, oratory, speech. All of these people making big proclamations. I will send you to Valhalla. I am this thing, whatever. On all these names that are like titles. He understands this whole concept of creating some
iconography
individual that's on a pedestal, that has some look, that has something. And even Chris Hemsworth is trying to do that, right? He gets the cape. He wants something cool.
Correct.
He literally, his second half journey is, how do I become like a cool version of myself? I also need to be. He's like a wannabe
Immortan Joe. He's not smart enough. He's trying hard to be like Immortan Joe, but once he gets bullet down, he realizes that he is not, or whatever, gas farm, right? He realizes he doesn't have the smarts to run this place as well.
One is, you need a separation. You can't have Dementus being the same as Immortan Joe. He can't be the same type of villain that Immortan Joe is. So you have to make something different out of him. But what he does here is also make him incompetent. And there's this bit in Gas Farm when they come to take the gas, and he's like, I don't know what's happening. Like, he's like so incompetent, he doesn't understand what the people like. Everybody's revolting, and like, I don't get it. He's frazzled and all that. There's the whole like incompetence also rises there.
And he's incompetent.
You have Donald Trump, who has no idea what's happening. He just wants to be the boss, and he's just like putting people here and there, and like chaos is reigning.
But also, by the way, there are small shreds of humanity also. Like, he actually saves her, right? When he tries to take over the Citadel, and there is this whatever the crane that comes and tries to lift the entire carriage. He actually actively goes and tries to save Furiosa, and actually saves Furiosa, puts her on the bike and takes her away, etc. So traces of humanity from his past, and a lot of incompetence also.
Traces of humanity. He's trying to figure out how to work with his loss. Again, I assume a lot of this is the backstory that has come out visibly because you've cast a Chris Hemsworth, so you need to give him something to do beyond just being a standard villain. Again, in terms of vehicles, his chariot was pretty cool. The chariot,
How does the thing stand? Why do those bikes not topple? Amazing, and he's riding it with trains, right? So cool.
Like a chariot, he's riding this bike chariot.
And he has an old dude lying down in the front also. In some parts.
He has old dude with the tattoos who is the storyteller and the oracle and the I will keep the stories of what happened. I know he's searching for words. He doesn't know English properly. Like he doesn't know fancy words. So he keeps searching for words and using them wrong. There's interesting stuff happening with this character, but it didn't fully gel for me. Not for lack of trying from his part or whatever else, but I feel like just it didn't fully fit. Speaking of people playing two parts, so mom has a friend who turns around and goes back over to her.
Right,
that's Elsa Pataki. That's Chris Hemsworth's wife.
Okay. What other part does she play?
Later, Chris Hemsworth has a bunch of people in. One of them has this fully opened up doll.
That's her?
That's her.
Okay.
She's back again later. But she was also in, since you spoke about Fast and Furious, she was also in Fast and Furious. She's the mother of the child. She's that Brazilian officer with Rock, who then has a baby with
absolutely
the baby that we have in the baby that Dom has is her child. She dies in 6 or 7. Charlize kills her, by the way. In that plane, Charlize kills her in front of him.
That's part 8, I guess. Charlize is the I don't know.
So Charlize kills her.
Can't go against the family.
Full circle. Correct. Me familiar. Here was my joke to Barry. Anya-Taylor Joy, who's also in Dune. She's in Dune for like a minute and a half, maybe altogether. She has like some 4 lines. I don't know if you saw it.
Probably more dialogue than she has in Furiosa.
One. But also in 1.5 days of shooting for Dune, she must have seen more sand than she saw in... I'm being unfair, but that was the joke that I was playing.
No, the funny thing is I didn't notice, but I guess that's just me as a viewer. I'm not really... I try hard to actually be fooled. So I get fooled. So it has to be... the effects have to be really bad for me to see through that. So,
For me, the problem is not the effects are bad. This was something I was discussing with Barry as well. The reason we're now complete is because the movie itself, we were not able to latch on to the story that was happening. We were in and out of the stuff that was happening. If the story had worked, I would have been like, he's used some graphics, but big deal. So what, you make things easy. I would have said efficiency is good. He's an old man. Why should he shoot? Like, what the fuck? Like, I would have justified it.
Justified.
So if it's good, you will justify. If it's bad, then you will start finding 3 more things. So for me, at the base level, even that 40-day war, for a movie that should be about this, in background, some 40-day war has happened.
They don't show the war at all. Straight at the end of the war, she's looking for a car and
Why even have the war?
I don't know.
What did it really help? Because the end of the war was back to the same story. Nothing has changed.
Correct. Nothing changed.
From a practical
it seemed like an exposition dump and maybe some philosophical point that you wanted to make about how at the end of the day everything is decided by stupid wars that have been happening forever. And
one of the things that happens when you do a prequel where you know exactly where the character is later and you have 3 beats you want to hit. Okay, you want to hit the hair going. You want to hit the arm going. Right? You have some 2-3 things that you want to somehow show. You want to show why she's so good with the war. That is great. That's part of the story. She's the one who built it. She's the one who worked on it. She's the one who then drove it for a long time as second in command with Praetorian. That's great. Here also, they did it twice, so they screwed up. They should have just done it once. Hand, you think of many things that could happen. Right? What is the coolest thing that could happen?
It's that she cuts it off.
She cuts it off. In fact, when they show the map on the left hand also, I was like, there will be a point where somebody's figured out the map is on her hand and she has to do it for that reason. So I was waiting for it to happen like that. And then I forgot, like you said, once you're in the throes of the story, you forget about it. Then her hand gets stuck, which is quite painful. It gets stuck between 2 vehicles. You say, okay, hand is gone. Then they're hanging her from that.
And then they show the arm is slowly ripping,
and then they show just the arm hanging and she's gone off, which is extremely badass and a very Furiosa thing to have done. I like the fact that not only she ripped her own, but in that state, she her wherewithal to survive and to escape.
And then
was
to
so
ride a
high
bike
that
and
she
get
said-
away.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was very good within trying to do things that we know are going to happen, but subverting your expectation of how exactly we're going to show you losing this.
Yeah.
That
pretty
sequence also was great, where they just drag that guy round and round
Yeah.
and round. They don't do much, but they just go round and round, and he's like trying to run and he gets pulled around.
Yeah.
Tough sequence to watch also, the way they do it. You can see her going through all of those emotions, and you can see Chris Hemsworth just being like this
Cruel.
unnecessary
Yeah.
petty asshole.
Yeah.
Just like for
But
the
no,
sake
he was
of
also angry
simple-
because they destroyed the bullet farm and nearly
Yeah.
killed him. So right from that
Yeah.
stage, his rage takes over. Right? He literally
Yeah.
single-minded pursuit. He comes in that whatever that bumper car thingy tank of his, and that chase is also fun. He goes straight up vertical slopes to catch these guys and all of that. Yeah.
It's good fun. It's not doing
The
so.
movie is done pretty badly, right? Which which I find surprising, despite everything, all the flaws that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I would still have
Yeah,
not
it still
imagined
should
it
have
to bomb. It's
basically
kind
worked.
of
Yeah, it should have worked.
surprising
Reasonably
that
worked.
it
It
is
did
bombed.
not.
Yeah.
It's difficult getting people out of theaters nowadays, man. Everything is like that effort of stepping out is actually quite tough. And every now and then, like you need some Barbenheimer, like two things coming in such opposition. You need something that people are like waiting to come out for. Top Gun. You need that kind of like real event.
It's a
Avatar
follow-up
for
to
that
the
matter.
greatest action movie ever made is, I think, good enough, man. Like to get people out there.
But then at that point, within a weekend, if you figure out that the movie is not as good as people want it to be, apart from not being as good as Fury Road, then like, screw it, it'll come on TV anyway after like 20 days. So big deal.
I think, by the way, the problem is not that it's not as good as people want it to be, but not as good as Fury Road, I think, has worked significantly against this one. Because everybody's going to say, hey, yeah, it's more of the same, but it's not that good. And that's good enough.
Yeah.
If I hear that as a review, it's good enough for me to say, okay, then I'll skip it.
Yeah.
So, just sad.
It's a tough time. Let's see what happens in the
I'm
summer.
already
Maybe
seeing
10.
that Bad Boys is running in IMAX screens in Dubai.
Yeah.
Furiosa is out. Even Planet of the Apes also is not running on IMAX anymore.
Kingdom
I don't
of
know
the
if
Planet of the
Kingdom
Apes,
of the
please.
Planet of whatever. I can't be bothered about these names. Which also, by the way,
Nonsense.
is not done all that well, apparently.
No,
and
it hasn't.
Not got great reviews.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Bad Boys doing reasonably
Deadpool.
well.
Which
Deadpool
is-
versus Wolverine will bring back theaters and bring back the MCU. Come
and
on.
bring back my cynicism. If that is a movie
Yes.
that's going to do well at the end of all of this.
If it's good and it does well, then it's good. Right? So cynicism aside.
If it does,
works,
if it's good, If it's good, yes.
Yeah. If it's some nonsense Fast 7 that has done well, not 7, but any of the others, then sure,
Yeah, Seven's a
nonsense.
good one.
Yeah, 7's I said 7 out of like, let me randomly pick a number. Unfortunately, I picked the one number that was kind of decent, or even if the movie is actually just about okay, the way it ends, I thought was decent. Anyway, let's
Allah
not
for a
get-
reason, Machan. 7.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. That was our review of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, and in fact, the actual Mad Max Saga itself. Unlike that movie name, which was
is a
messed up.
chapter in the saga. It's not the saga.
I
You
don't
can't say
even know.
a saga.
Yeah, you can't say a saga. What is a saga?
Yeah.
Right. But what we did here was speak about the entire saga of the Mad Max universe. Please witness this episode. It is not mediocre. We are at the gates of Valhalla, hoping for your 5-star reviews and the subscribe button being pressed. So please do that and let your friends know about this podcast.
Hopefully, Mad Max comes back in some other way. I live, I die, I live again. We'll see if
Yes.
they come back. But thank you. This was good. Please go watch the earlier movies. If nothing else, if it reminds you to watch Fury Road again, I think that is a good enough reason to listen to this podcast. And if you watch that movie, that's a success point as far as I'm concerned.
Fully worth rewatching. Yes, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again with another episode of the Intermission pretty soon. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye.